Hi friends, welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm Kenzie, and today I'll be reading more true paranormal stories from Reddit. This first one comes from user Lawyers, Guns, and Money 90. Mimicking Ghost. We bought our house a few years ago and didn't start having any issues until about 6 months in. The house itself was built in 1970, so it isn't too old, but there's a small graveyard containing 6 graves in the backyard. The first thing that happened was small, and I didn't think much of it. The kids were all outside, but I clearly heard one of them say, "Mommy?" from across the house. I walked over to the other side and didn't see anyone, called out a few times and went back to ask my husband if he'd just heard anything. He said he hadn't, and I figured I'd just imagined the whole thing. A few weeks later, the kids were all at school and I was alone in the house. This time, I heard a child laugh. It sent chills down my spine and I was terrified. I checked through the other side of the house again, and again there was nothing. I texted my husband as he was at work. He said it was creepy and to avoid that side of the house. A long time passed before it happened again. This was about a month ago and was the worst mimic yet. I was alone in the house watching TV when I heard my husband's very distinct clearing of his throat followed by a cough. The sound came from the basement, which follows the whole length of the house, a ranch, and it came from the same side of the house that I heard the other mimics before. I freaked out and called him, and he basically told me to leave, afraid someone had broken in. But the thing is, it was his voice. It was the exact way I hear him clear his throat every day. Either I'm losing it or we have a mimicking ghost. The next story is an update from the last story. I made the other post a while back, explaining some of the happenings in our home. Well, now we're moving and the house has been going absolutely nuts. I was at the house alone earlier today, packing a few things in the kitchen in boxes when I heard 2 distinct meows coming from the bad side, aka the side the mimic always seems to come from, of the house. I thought nothing of it at first, as we have 2 cats, but then realized that I had already moved them to my new apartment. There isn't any open access inside, but I checked around the bad side of the house just in case and could find no evidence of any other cats, kittens, or other animals living there. After I couldn't find anything, I went back to packing things up and ignored it, as I've ignored the weird things happening in the house before. As I was putting some food in the bin, I heard a cough followed by muffled talking in the basement, again coming from the bad side of the house. I decided that was enough packing for today and noped out of there, and am currently in bed with my cats at our new place. I will be going back later, and I'm really considering leaving a tape recorder there, maybe catch an EVP. We'll update if I do. This next story comes from user single-perception660. Red Eyes. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, my sisters and I used to share a room. Most nights, my older sister and I would see 2 distinct figures. She would see a lady in white standing in the doorway directly in front of my bed. I would see a man with red eyes, or at least I thought it was a man, as all I could see were red eyes. Though my sister could see the lady, she said she never spoke to her. She just stood there getting closer every night. While I, on the other hand, would see a pair of bright red eyes staring at me from the closet. A disembodied masculine voice would whisper, "JJ, come to the closet and play," over and over. Sometimes my older sister and I would jump in each other's beds and hide under the blankets until morning. This was going on for months until my dad decided to get the house blessed again. We never saw them after that. I'm 24 now. My wife and I recently had a baby. I've been having weird dreams recently. They would always start with me standing in my son's room, staring at the closet, and the familiar set of red eyes would stare back at me. My most recent dream, he actually spoke, his voice a lot deeper and booming than I remember. "You didn't come play with me, but your son may be the one to play," he said before I woke up. I called my dad and told him about the whole thing. He told me he remembers me telling him about the man years before. But then, just then, he went silent for about 5 minutes. When he spoke again, he recounted seeing the same figure as a child. He also told me he remembered having the same dream after I was born. I've blessed my house twice already, but I can only protect my son so much. I just hope, I really hope, that he doesn't go play in the closet. I may never see him again. This next story comes from user BossSpleenRippa. My experience inside a haunted mine. So I've been holding on to this experience for about a year now and have decided to share it with you guys, mostly to get it off my chest. I work in a deep underground potash mine. For anyone who has never experienced what it's like to be several thousand feet underground, it is a very uncanny experience. There is no natural lighting, and usually the only artificial light comes from your cap lamp or any vehicles you're operating. You can hear the earth shift and the vast weight above you slowly bear down on the tunnel you're working in. I had been working underground for about 6 months and was being sent to an abandoned part of the mine to make it safe enough for crews to be sent in to recover some equipment and machinery that had been left behind. The area I was being sent in was infamous for being the location a mine operator, that I will refer to as Chris, had been killed by being pinched in between two pieces of equipment and having his torso split in half. This accident has shaken a lot of the guys underground, and many refuse to work in that area again. So as the junior operator, I was the unlucky bastard that had to go in. I was sent in by myself to get the job started and was supposed to get another operator to come help me once I was ready. The beginning tunnel had so much potash dust piled up over the years that it reached my knees and made it almost impossible to see while driving in my bolter, a vehicle that drives 8-foot metal bolts into ceiling to prevent the ceiling from caving in. I remember feeling so uneasy while I was in there, like I wasn't supposed to be there. Once I got to my first location to start bolting, I began setting everything up. I was setting up bolts when I noticed a moving light coming from the opposite end of the tunnel from where I had entered. I initially thought it could be another worker that was also doing work in that tunnel, so I started doing cap lamp signals, our own form of sign language with our lights so we can communicate. I signaled for whoever was making the light to come towards me. Once I made that signal, the light stopped moving and after a few seconds disappeared. I was becoming worried and tried to reason to myself what the light could be. It really couldn't have been another worker, because it wasn't safe to go any further until my work was done. It couldn't have been a piece of equipment because it responded to my light. I was terrified and honestly didn't know what to do. I was scared to attempt to leave because my bolter kicked up so much dust, but I also didn't want to go by foot because I'd only have my cap lamp for lighting. I decided to stay camped inside the bolter till my backup arrived. The light never returned, and when my coworker arrived, I gained enough confidence to finish the job and leave. I don't know what I saw, but I can't help but thinking it's the soul of Chris. The idea of his soul being trapped in that tunnel really bothers me, and I actually left the underground for a surface position partially because of this encounter. This last story is from user ParkersPepper, the little girl standing next to my bed. This happened to me back in September 2019. I lived in a dorm room in Paris. From my bed, I could not see the entry door, kitchen, nor bathroom. I was burned out at the time, from my job, not classes, and slept a lot when I didn't have to wake up at 3 a.m. It was a bit after 11 p.m. I had been asleep for around an hour when I woke up, and rather than turning around in my bed and falling back asleep as I usually do, I opened my eyes. There, standing right next to my bed, was a little girl. I sat up and screamed as I've never screamed before in my life while trying to turn on the light. I kept eye contact with her as I panicked and finally had no other choice but to briefly look for the switch, and when I turned back, she wasn't there anymore. When I turned the light on, it was like going from one reality to another. My heart was racing and I couldn't move. At that moment, I did not realize it may have been a ghost and was truly afraid people had broken into my room. The building I lived in, also it had been made for students, had many poor families living in those very small studios/room, and I usually wasn't home at the time this happened, coming back from work around midnight because of the distance between my work and this place. It wasn't the worst, but still not the best neighborhood. Also, my first thought seeing her was that this was a very real little girl and people were in my room. But no one was there. It took me 10 to 15 minutes to move and check for hidden intruders or signs of effraction. Nothing. And yet it had felt so real. My heart was still going insane in my chest, and my throat hurt from screaming, and I remember her eyes looking straight back at me. The logical explanation is that I was dreaming, and it would explain why, despite all my best effort, I could not turn the light on, and I just woke up in the middle of it, already sitting in my bed, which had never happened before. Or maybe I accidentally astral projected myself in my sleep or something, meaning I was in the spirit's place or whatever it's called. I don't know. Anyway, I still spent a few minutes talking to her. I told her I was sorry if something bad had happened to her, and if she needed help or something, please to ask another way that wouldn't scare the hell out of me. She didn't come back, that I know of. In any case, it's not something I would like a repeat of anytime soon. And that's all the stories I have for today. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe so you know when I post next. Put your paranormal stories in the comments and maybe I'll read them in the next video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!